They're coming for one nation, and everyone paying attention knows it. Wow, right? That is one heck of an opening line. It just grabs you right by the collar. What you just heard is the opening salvo of a fiercely passionate, highly charged political opinion piece that's circulating right now. It's an absolute masterclass in populist political writing, setting this intense, incredibly high-stakes tone right from the very first syllable. Hello and welcome to This Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today. We're going to do something a little bit different this time, and frankly, I think it's fascinating. We're taking that intense political opinion piece we just quoted, and we're going to neutrally deconstruct it. We aren't here to take sides or endorse a viewpoint or anything like that. Instead, we're going to look under the hood. We're mapping out the exact anatomy of the author's argument, really understanding step by step how a powerful political message is constructed to completely capture a voter's attention. Okay, let's dive straight into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the polling surge. Second, the establishment playbook. Third, a history of fractures. Fourth, the broken system. And finally, the final pitch. Let's get started. Section 1. The polling surge. Tracking the shift. You know, every good political argument needs a catalyst, right? Well, the author anchors their entire premise on these frankly shocking recent polling numbers. We're talking One Nation surging to 26%, literally pulling ahead of the traditional conservative coalition who are sitting at 19%. The author argues that this specific data point, actually crossing that threshold and overtaking a major party, is the inciting incident. It's the moment that panic allegedly set in across the political spectrum, and it serves as the ultimate launchpad for the rest of their argument. Moving on to Section 2, the establishment playbook, the predicted response. Now, what's really interesting here is that instead of just celebrating the poll, the author immediately pivots to warn the reader about a coordinated counterattack. And they get incredibly specific, laying out a literal 4-step playbook they claim the establishment is about to unleash. Step 1. Dig through candidates' Facebook histories for dodgy posts from way back in 2015. Step 2. Take some stupid offhand comment made at a local barbecue and blow it up into a week-long national scandal. Step 3. Suddenly demand detailed costings for policies, something the author claims the media rarely asks of the major parties. And Step 4. Dust off those classic One Nation is falling apart headlines. By predicting these exact tactics, the author is cleverly preparing you, the reader, to dismiss any future negative news as just part of a rigged game. And just look at the emotionally charged terminology the author uses to frame these tactics. They call it gotcha journalism. They talk about pearl-clutching and concerned editorials written by people who, quote, have never missed a meal in their lives. This is highly, highly effective persuasive writing. By framing these pretty normal media inquiries as intentional, bad faith tools designed simply to create doubt, the author creates this huge us versus them dynamic. They're practically urging the reader, don't fall for the establishment's tricks. All right, Section 3, a history of fractures. The concession. Now, here is where the piece makes a genuinely brilliant rhetorical pivot. The author explicitly concedes to the party's past implosions. They openly note that 22 out of 36 MPs walked out or fractured the party over the years, and they even name specific figures like Culleton, Anning, Burston, and Latham. But notice the structure they build here. It's a yes-but approach. Yes, they had a fractured past, but look at them now. They contrast that messy history against a massive modern footprint of having active branches in all 151 federal electorates. It's a classic inoculation technique. You admit a weakness before your opponent can even use it against you, and then you immediately pivot to your newfound strength. To further cement this idea of a new, robust party, the author brings up some high-profile defectors. They point to well-known figures like Barnaby Joyce and Cory Bernardi joining the ranks, and the reasoning given here is absolutely crucial. The author claims these guys didn't just join because it was trendy. They joined because they looked at the traditional coalition, saw a total dead end, and viewed the major parties as complete wreckage. This is a very deliberate signal to the reader that serious, seasoned political operators are validating this populist surge. Section 4. The broken system. The core grievance. And that leads us directly to the foundational core of the whole argument. Moving away from the political inside baseball, we get to the everyday financial pain. The entire piece really hinges on this one striking statistic, 51%. The author states that 51% of Australians believe the entire political system is fundamentally broken. Think about that. This number acts as the ultimate justification for everything we've talked about so far. If a clear majority feels the system is entirely broken, Well, then a radical departure from the norm isn't just understandable, it's totally expected. The author grounds this political theory right in raw, everyday reality. The text hits the reader with a rapid-fire list of intense financial pressures: unpayable mortgages, rent that people simply cannot afford anymore, walking out of the supermarket with a $300 grocery trolley. By listing these visceral, kitchen table issues, the author connects that high-level political polling directly to the very real, very heavy stress voters are feeling in their wallets every single week. So who is to blame for all this? The author is completely unequivocal. They say the major parties had 30 years to fix housing, wages, migration, and the cost of living. And the conclusion is pretty brutal. They didn't fix it, they won't fix it, and they can't fix it. Why? Because according to this piece, the system actually isn't failing by accident. It is working exactly the way the major parties designed it to work. It's a powerful, sweeping assertion that aims to strip away any hope of incremental reform from the traditional players. Finally, Section 5, the final pitch, the binary choice. And this brilliantly illustrates how the author synthesizes all of these structural grievances and polling data into one direct, incredibly urgent call to action. Their logic goes like this. When the party was polling at a mere 5%, the establishment essentially ignored them. But now, polling at 26%, the author argues that the intense pushback they are about to face is actually proof of their success. The establishment isn't attacking because the party is a joke. They're attacking because they are genuinely terrified of losing their grip on power. It essentially flips any negative media coverage into a badge of honor. As they move to close the argument, the author does something super shrewd yet again. They preemptively inoculate the party against future scandals. The text just openly admits it. One Nation isn't perfect. It explicitly warns readers that there will be rough edges, and there will inevitably be candidates who, well, stuff up. By managing expectations so aggressively, the author ensures that when a candidate inevitably does make a mistake, the reader thinks, well, the author told me this would happen, rather than completely abandoning the movement. Which brings us to the emotional climax of the piece. The author boils the entire upcoming election down to this single powerful quote. The choice is between something that might actually change and a system that is guaranteed not to. This is the ultimate framing device. They aren't asking you to vote for perfection, no way. They are framing it as a strict black and white binary choice: take a roll of the dice on an imperfect alternative or accept a guaranteed continuation of the status quo. A status quo that they established earlier is causing so much financial pain. So, the really crucial takeaway from dissecting this piece isn't about whether you personally agree with the politics or not. It's about understanding exactly how effectively the author structured their case. They identified a massive grievance, they predicted the opposition's attacks to neutralize them, they freely admitted their own flaws to build trust, and ultimately, they cornered the reader with a stark ultimatum. It leaves us all with a really fascinating question to reflect on, pulled directly from the core thesis of the text. When voters feel unprecedented financial pressure, is it better to risk an imperfect alternative or stick with a system that many feel is guaranteed not to change? It's a huge, provocative question, and honestly, understanding how these arguments are built makes us all much sharper consumers of political information. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. I'll see you in the next explainer.